multiple bungee cords and other restraints, 2 bottles of chloroform, and clothing that had been cut.
I'm not telling her, you're not taking her, you're not doing nothing. So she told me Ricky was her, make her have all sex.
On the evening of July 9th, 2014, 30-year-old Joelle Lockwood was walking through a quiet residential neighborhood in Evansville, Indiana. It was a warm summer night, and she wore shorts, a tank top, and pink sneakers to stay comfortable in the heat. Without a cell phone or car, she was headed back to the shelter where she'd been living after spending time at a friend's house. But that night, something unexpected happened. Joelle wouldn't return to the shelter as planned. Joelle's life hadn't been easy. A mother of 2, she struggled with drug abuse, which led her down a difficult path. Living in a shelter at the time, it was clear she was still trying to get back on her feet. Though life had its challenges, Joelle's family cared deeply for her, and they stayed in her corner despite her struggles. When they realized she hadn't returned as expected, concern quickly grew. They notified the police and began searching for her, hoping to find answers before it was too late. Joelle's family sprang into action after her disappearance, putting up flyers and reaching out to anyone who might have seen her. Despite their efforts, there was little progress in her case. The local news covered her story, but Joelle's struggles with addiction and living in a shelter made it difficult to capture widespread attention. Sadly, cases like hers often fade into the background. That all changed on August 15th, when another woman, Kristy Kelly, from nearby Boonville, Indiana, was reported missing just 20 miles away. The similarities between the 2 cases, 2 women vanishing within a short distance, caught the attention of national media outlets like People magazine and Nancy Grace. Suddenly, both disappearances were in the spotlight. Kristy Kelly was last seen leaving a bar, the local VFW, on the night of August 15th, captured on CCTV footage driving away in her car. After that, all signs of her vanished. She had left her phone behind at the bar, and there was no activity on her bank accounts. Aside from the fact that both women were mothers, Kristy and Joelle had led very different lives. While Joelle was living in a shelter, Kristy had a job and was staying with her parents, trying to rebuild her life after a divorce. Yet their similar age and the 20 miles separating their disappearances were enough to connect them in the public's mind. By the time Kristy Kelly disappeared, Joelle Lockwood had already been missing for over a month. The weeks dragged on, and while both cases captured the nation's attention, the outcomes would be strikingly different. By September, the truth about what happened to both women would finally come to light, one case ending in tragedy, while the other revealed a story of survival that no one could have predicted. On that hot July night, as Joelle Lockwood walked back towards the shelter, a vehicle slowed down beside her. When she glanced over and saw who it was, she felt her guard drop. Behind the wheel was Ricky House Jr., someone she knew from back in the day. They had gone to school together, and she also knew his girlfriend, Kendra Tooley, from an old job. Ricky offered Joelle a chance to come and hang out with them and party. Joelle, already drunk after leaving her friend's house, agreed to join them, but only if they could get her back to the shelter by midnight. Trusting familiar faces, she got into the car. Ricky and Kendra lived in a trailer home about 20 miles outside of Evansville. After arriving, they spent some time hanging out, drinking and smoking together. But as the night wore on, Joelle reminded them that she needed to get back to the shelter before the curfew. That's when everything changed. Instead of taking her back, Ricky suddenly rushed at her, pressing a rag into her face. Joelle struggled, but it wasn't long before everything went black. When Joelle woke up, she found herself tied to a bed, naked and blindfolded. Her hands were bound tightly with zip ties, so tight they had gone numb. Panic set in immediately as she began begging them to let her go, terrified of what they had planned for her. Fear gripped her as she wondered if they were going to kill her. That's when Ricky delivered the chilling truth. She was their slave now. Day after day, Joelle endured the nightmare of being their slave. Weeks passed with no chance of escape. The trailer had no running water, so she couldn't bathe. They barely fed her. She only ate if there were leftovers, and sometimes there weren't any. Ricky did unspeakable things to her, and Kendra helped. She would tie Joelle up and watch while Ricky violated her. There was never a moment where she wasn't being watched. Joelle was trapped in a horrifying cycle of control, powerless and terrified that she might never make it out alive. When Joelle wasn't being violated, she was forced to clean the filthy trailer. They put a belt and a dog collar on her, with a rope attached to keep her restrained. She had nothing to wear but a t-shirt, leaving her feeling completely exposed and degraded. At night, they locked her inside a homemade cage that Ricky had anchored to the walls and floor of a closet. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary closet, but hidden inside was the sturdy small cage with an opening at the top. Joelle could only curl up to fit inside, and once the closet door was closed, no one would know she was trapped there. As time went on, Joelle learned the horrifying reason behind her abduction. Ricky wanted a baby. Kendra, at 44, was too old to have children, he said, so they had taken Joelle. She would remain their prisoner until she gave him one. Ricky and Kendra were using chloroform on Joelle, knocking her out whenever they wanted to control her. She knew what would happen every time she woke up bound with the zip ties and bungee cords. Sometimes she was conscious during the abuse, and other times the chloroform made her drift in and out. Joelle wasn't sure which one was worse, being awake for the horror or being knocked out while it happened. To make it even more horrible, they took photos of the abuse, capturing her humiliation and pain. She endured this nightmare day after day, week after week. For just under 2 months, her life was nothing but pain and fear, until one day something changed. One day, a man arrived at the trailer, a big, burly man who looked like a biker to Joelle. She hoped this was her chance, that maybe she could say something to him and get help. The man was Ronald Higgs, Kendra's ex, who she had called to see if he could loan her some money. During their conversation, Kendra confessed to Ronald, saying,
She slid over on the couch beside me and says, I've got a girl back here in a cage. I said, you got a girl back there in a cage? What are you talking about?
At first, Ronald thought maybe Ricky and Kendra were into some kind of kinky stuff, possibly related to drugs. But when he saw Joelle, dressed only in a t-shirt and dog collar, trapped in the small cage, he knew it was something far worse. Joelle looked broken, like a whooped dog, as Ronald later described. Her hair was a mess, she was dirty, smelled awful, and looked absolutely terrified. When he got a chance, Ronald spoke with her. Joelle told him everything, how they had taken her, held her captive for nearly 2 months, and the horrible things they had done to her. She begged him not to leave without helping her, saying Ricky and Kendra would kill her if she tried to escape. Desperate, she pleaded with him to save her.
I didn't really know what I could do because I'm nowhere near the man I used to be. But I'm not leaving this house without her.
Ronald Higgs had been a tough biker in his younger days, but now he wasn't sure how Ricky would react or if he could get Joelle out without putting himself or her in danger. He tried reasoning with Ricky, thinking money might convince him. Both Ricky and Kendra were using meth, so Ronald offered them cash, hoping they would jump at the offer. But Ricky refused, saying, quote, "She's not leaving till she has the baby. I'm not selling her, and she's not leaving." Ronald realized then that there was no negotiating. He'd have to forcefully break Joelle out, somehow. Ronald had made up his mind he was going to take Joelle, even if it came to a fight. He told Ricky his plan, bracing for a confrontation. In response, Ricky grabbed a shotgun and jammed it against Ronald's neck, threatening to shoot. But Ronald, unfazed, looked him dead in the eye and said, "If you're gonna kill me, you better do it now, or I'll take this fucking gun and beat you to death with it." Ricky hesitated for a moment, giving Ronald the chance to grab the gun away. That's when Ricky erupted, kicking and punching at Ronald. At the same time, Kendra attacked Joelle, who was on the floor crying as Kendra kicked and hit her. Despite his age, Ronald's head was as hard as ever. In the middle of the brawl, he headbutted Ricky, causing him to retreat and lock himself in another room.
Higgs says while Ricky retreated to another room in the trailer, he saw his opportunity to escape with Joelle.
Turning to Kendra, Ronald pleaded with her to just let Joelle go. He promised not to go to the cops. Whether it was fear or desperation, Kendra believed him and finally relented. Ronald quickly helped Joelle up and took her back to his house, where the first thing she did was take a hot shower, washing away weeks of filth and terror. Afterward, Ronald contacted Joelle's family and the police, who rushed over. The man they called the Mountain Man, Ronald Higgs, was brought to tears as Joelle was reunited with her mother. For the first time in 2 months, Joelle was free. The police immediately arrested Ricky and Kendra after Joelle's escape. Together, they were charged with a total of 24 counts, including multiple assaults, conspiracy, criminal confinement, and kidnapping. Both tried to claim that everything was consensual, saying Joelle had agreed to it in exchange for meth. But the evidence told a different story. Investigators found the photographs, chloroform, restraints, everything Joelle had described. Along with Ronald's account of the rescue, there was no way a jury could believe their defense. Kendra knew it, and eventually she agreed to testify against Ricky, hoping for some leniency in her own sentencing. She pled guilty to several of her charges and later admitted under oath that Joelle had not consented to any of it. Kendra claimed that Ricky had been dominating her as well, and that the entire situation had been his sick fantasy. Joelle bravely testified too, recounting in detail the horrifying abuse she had endured for nearly 2 months. Ricky was found guilty on 10 of the 14 charges against him. During sentencing, powerful statements influenced the judge's decision. The prosecution asked for a 100-year sentence, with one of the police officers involved describing what had happened to Joelle as sadistic, saying he had never seen anything like it in his entire career. He called Ricky evil and unredeemable, a danger to society who needed to be locked away for life. Joelle didn't attend the sentencing, having already endured too much. Instead, her mother gave a moving impact statement describing the pain, abuse, and degradation that Joelle had suffered during her captivity. In the end, Ricky was sentenced to 93 years in prison, just shy of the 100 years everyone had hoped for. He is required to serve a minimum of 75% of his sentence before being eligible for parole, meaning he will spend at least 70 years behind bars. Kendra, meanwhile, pleaded guilty to 4 charges as part of her plea deal and was sentenced to 25 years in prison for her role. She will be almost 70 years old when she becomes eligible for parole. While Joelle's rescue offered hope to her family and the public, it also reignited hope for Kristy Kelly's family, who were still searching for answers. After Joelle was found alive, Kristy's loved ones believed she, too, might be rescued. But not long after, Kristy's damaged car was discovered submerged in a pond with her body inside. Her death was ruled an accident, but her family remains unconvinced. Several troubling details have cast doubt on the official conclusion. Threatening text messages Kristy received before her disappearance, the fact that her car was found in park, raising questions about how it could have gone into the water, and failed polygraph tests from certain individuals all fueled suspicion. To add to the mystery, the sheriff sealed the official report, leaving Kristy's family and the public with more questions than answers. Joelle Lockwood's story is one of survival against impossible odds. After enduring weeks of captivity and abuse, her strength and resilience helped her escape a situation most of us can't even imagine. Joelle's story is now being told in her own words, thanks to a short documentary made by her cousin, where Joelle bravely speaks about what she endured. I'll leave a link in the description. What are your thoughts on Joelle's case? Feel free to share them with me in the comments. Joelle Lockwood's survival wasn't just a testament to her own strength, It also speaks to the courage of one man, Ronald Hicks, who saw the unthinkable and chose to act. Without his bravery, Joelle might never have escaped. His decision to intervene, even in the face of danger, reminds us of the power one person can have to change the course of someone else's life. Remember, every wrinkle tells a story, and in the wrinkles of crime, we find the truth.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. I'd love to hear your opinions or suggestions in the comments. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next video, and we'll explore another story hidden within the wrinkles in crime.